Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matty K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 198. And this episode, we've learned from our mistakes. Putting discs inside a handheld system maybe wasn't the best idea, no matter how much you call it universal. But we did add a couple of touchpads, and we hope you like it, because this episode is our console retrospective on the PlayStation Vita. If it were just me and Matt, it would just be me ranting for about 3 hours to both bolster the conversation and temper those edges. From RPG Site, we are joined by James Galizio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
James, we're so happy to have you. You recently did a side quest, although I always say recently, and then I look at how long ago it was and go, oh, that was 2 months ago or whatever it is. And I'm like, that wasn't that recent.
I think we recorded that like 6 months ago even, like in February.
Yeah.
Lifting the curtain on podcast production. Time means even less sense.
Yep.
But we're so happy to have you here. I have worked with and I'm good friends with one of your colleagues over at RPG Site, Scott White, who's also been on the show. And so it was only a matter of time before we had you on. And basically, when we posted looking for someone, you basically posted your collection and went, I think I'm capable. And so, of course, we were excited because I went, who the F am I going to get to be on this episode? So always excited to have you on.
And James and I had just recently recorded on Still Loading for Final Fantasy.
Yes, for the Final Fantasy Fantasy Dress, where you won with Fanal Fistini. Yeah, Fanal Fistini, which is just as fun to say as it is to play.
That was so much fun, and I had a great time with you, James. So when you hopped on and were like, I could do this, I was so excited. So I'm very happy we're here right now.
Yeah, I'm glad that turned out well. That was my first time doing a fantasy draft like that. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to nail it. And I was like, yes, I did it.
Yeah, right? No, I absolutely was like, I got to lean into the jokes. Otherwise, I will show my ignorance. So, yeah.
Shout out to Josh Koval over at Still Loading. We love Josh here on the show. Both Geoff and I and James have been able to guest on that show. Go check it out. It's on all podcast platforms. But we're here to talk about the PS Vita. So this came out in Japan, December 2011 in North America, February of 2012, and then in the EU later in February 2012, like a week apart, which just seems bizarre to me to be a week apart.
It was even weirder. It's not something you really hear about, but like the Vita had a weird release in the North American regions too, because there was like a bundle you could get where it would be like, you can get this a week early, and then the actual release date was a week after that if you just wanted the system.
Oh, interesting. That's bizarre. So this was the second handheld from Sony following up the PSP. As always, before we get into like the life and times of the console and some of our favorites, we'll get into our history. And I'm going to go first because I have no history with this console. That's right, folks. We've hit the point in our retrospectives where we're going to cover occasional consoles that Geoff or I don't have experience with. There are a few consoles that neither Geoff and I have a ton of experience with. So those are going to be really fun. But like the Xbox 360 with Geoff, and Geoff only getting that later in life and having something to contribute, but less than me and Dave, I'm on the opposite end here with the Vita. I've never owned the system. I've held it a couple of times. I had several friends who had it. I've never played the system at length. I have played several games now that they've been ported to the Switch. I'm very slowly making my way through Persona 4 Golden, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. So I have experience with some PlayStation Vita games, but none on the console. So my history is non-existent. I was always curious about it, but I'd gotten a PSP early. And when we eventually cover that console, I'll have a lot more to say. I owned the PSP like 4 different times, would sell it and rebuy it.
Real.
The Vita, I have no experience with, which is interesting because, like,
Vita was not your life.
Well, no, it was not. But also, it's weird for me as like the handheld connoisseur. Like, I pride myself on loving handhelds and preferring handhelds. For whatever reason, it was probably the price tag. I just didn't pick this up. But yeah, so I guess let's go to our guest first, and then we'll finish out with Geoff. James, what's your history with the PS Vita? Did you get it at launch? How early did you pick it up?
Yes, I got it at the North American launch. I was a big fan of the PSP. It's what got me into Monster Hunter. It's what got me into a bunch of other franchises. I picked up the Vita because it's like, well, I loved the PSP, so obviously I want to get the follow-up. I'll be the first to admit what I originally picked up the Vita for wasn't what I ended up using it for in the long run. It was like kind of like the Trojan horse to get me into an entirely different genre of games. But we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But yeah, I had it at launch, and I think my current collection is something like 90 plus physical Vita games.
Oh, God,
That's
I'm jealous.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you got with it at launch?
Blaze Blue, Continuum Shift Extend, Hot Shots Golf, Wipeout 2048,
Nice.
Rayman Origins, and then Super Stardust Delta. And I think I picked up Uncharted a few weeks later.
If I had known at the time that there was a Wipeout game on it, that might have gotten me to buy it sight unseen, because I love the Wipeout series. Someday we're going to do a retrospective on those racers because those games were great. But that's such a unique spread of games for a launch, right? Like none really super. Like, I guess Wipeout is a first party like title, but not in the way.
So is Hot Shots,
right?
Yeah,
but not in the way that you think of like what Sony is today, right? Like this is back in the weirder days of Sony, which I miss.
It was a very PS2 style launch.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was a bit of that, and it was a bit of the PS Vita existed in a very funny time where, listener, if you were listening to the dates there, this was kind of released on the tail end of the PS3 onto the beginnings of the PS4, which I think did contribute to some of its issues. But this was also the, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. This was the ad campaign where they had the guy, it's like Kevin Butler or whatever, as the VP of whatever the thing is. It's like, Dear PlayStation, whatever thing. And it was just comedic. This was that era. And so the brand identity wasn't necessarily, mascot or character driven in quite the same way. There wasn't a fresh Uncharted game. So, yeah, it was like Wipeout, or it was Hot Shots Golf, or it was...
You did have Uncharted, which wasn't a Naughty Dog game, but I mean, it's as good as Uncharted 1.
It is.
Bar, but it's not bad. So,
I mean, the Vita was kind of... I mean, also after the Vita 3DS generation, we really haven't had a dedicated handheld since, so it feels a little odd to be like, oh yeah, no, it was the last generation where you really got that, like, here's the marquee title, and here's the handheld version. But that's what it was.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Geoff, but what about you? I can't remember if you had this one at launch or not.
So, my journey's a little weird.
What else is new?
I mean, even for me.
Oh, wow, okay.
I did not have the OLED version, and James, I'm very jealous. I've only ever seen it, and I've never held one. They look sexy.
Yep.
So this was a period of my life where I was far more of a scavenger than I currently am. I will never not be a scavenger as far as like used games, game experiences, whatever else. But at the time, I had a PS2, I had a GameCube, I might have had a Wii. I did not have a PS3. I did not have an Xbox 360. And the Wii I bought off of a friend for $50 kind of thing. The Vita happened, looked cool. I was sticking with my DS, eventually picking up a 3DS way later. We already covered that in the retrospective of that console. But then Sony released another device, and it was called the PlayStation TV. Yep. Or in Japan, the PlayStation Vita TV. It was released in Japan July 14th, 2013. In North America in January 16th, 2014. It was discontinued in North America in 2015 and early 2016 in Japan. But during that brief time, it was around $150 retail and then dropped all the way down to $30.
Yeah, I remember I got the bundle for that for like $30, and I bought one for myself and one for my girlfriend at the time in high school. So that was a fun time.
Right? Well, that was the thing. This reminded me of the sort of like window and freefall that the Virtual Boy went through. And I was finally able to be like, I'm a broke actor, but I could scrape together $30. And was looking at it and realized, okay, so the digital landscape of the Vita could play PS1 classics. It was concurrent with the PS3. Couldn't play full PS3 games, but a lot of digital titles, they could do the same. And so it was like, okay, it's $30 for the TV. I can get a used controller somewhere. And then the $9.99 retail for Suikoden 2. That $89.99 for Suikoden 2 is still a third of the price you would pay right now in order to play it. And I would have a new gameplay experience. This was the mindset that I had. I didn't even have to pay for the PlayStation TV. It was just the right time where I went like, this could make a good Christmas present, so I got it for Christmas. I picked up a hot pink PS3 controller at a video game con, and I was finally tapped into the PlayStation ecosystem yet again. And this was the start of the slippery slope where I am now drowning in it, and I love it. But I started with the PlayStation TV, and so I didn't have the full touchscreen experience or anything like that. I was kind of finding and figuring out my way and kind of just picking up games as I could. And then not long after that, I was heading back from Atlantic City with a friend and we were chatting. The Vita came up and he said, "Oh yeah, I've got one of those. You want it?" And he sold it to me for $75.
Nice.
Well, he lives in Jersey. His commute was short and he can't play the Vita while driving. The sort of use experiences that I use the Vita for are the complete opposite to how he was having it in suburban New Jersey. Yeah, no, that's the thing that I pack with me. I go to conventions, I ride the subway playing it, everything else. And so for less than $100, I had both versions of the PS Vita experience and breathed deep of it and love it.
Yep.
That's wild.
It's such a weird, high-tech, high-price, low-tech, just grab what you can kind of environment. It's so weird. There are no middle sliders on the Vita.
Yeah, and I think the reason why the Vita did have such a longevity in Japan was for a variety of reasons. One, it was a very good, basic, here's the ground level, what we absolutely need to run the games that we want to make. A lot of that was Sony had a really good tool set for cross development with Vita and PS3.
They played real nice.
Yeah, and even some developers would use Sony's own engine, Fire Engine, for their development. Nihon Falcom for a bit was mostly a Vita developer, but the first Trails of Cold Steel and the second one were both on Fire Engine, and because of that, they were cross-platform on Vita and PS3. It's interesting that you mentioned the commute. Even though I got the Vita at launch, I feel like I probably played it the most when I first got into community college. I commuted from Carlsbad in Southern California to this community college in San Marcos. And so I would take a bus ride to the Oceanside station. And then the Oceanside station had a direct actual train to the community college. That would be a 45-minute hour commute on the train each day, not counting the bus. So I would get really into, I got to do something while I'm on the train. And I ended up playing a bunch of my Vita that way, which was really funny because when I played Trails of Cold Steel, one of the big things in there is there's trains, you're commuting on trains. And it's I'm on a train.
It's really interesting too with the Vita because it was the first console to really have that cross-play feature, right? Where you could play console games on it and then it was kind of like a precursor to the Portal, I would guess, in that way. You weren't necessarily streaming them, but there was cross-compatibility.
No, you could.
Oh,
yeah,
amazing.
They actually got sued because they said there was going to be remote play on the PS3, and the only games that actually let you do that was Shadow of the Colossus and the Ico HD collection, the God of War collection. And that was not a good experience. Streaming from the PS3 was never good because the PS3 was never built for it. But then when you had remote play on the PS4, that was a good experience. I think I played through half of original Persona 5 that way.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Funnily enough, there's actually a homebrew application for you to do remote play from the PS5 to the Vita.
I was just going to ask about that. I was curious because I may or may not have found a way totally legally to stream the PS5 to my Steam Deck. By totally legal means.
Chiaki's great. It has HDR support. I played the vast majority of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that way.
Nice.
That worked out so well because that performance mode on base PS5 was not great, but streaming it to the Steam Deck, it looked just great. It was awesome.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
I think that it's fun from the outside looking in to see kind of where PlayStation is now via the Vita. So, Geoff, you mentioned how you got through the TV and then eventually got a Vita as well. Were there any landmark games when you first got your Vita that you played first? I assume it was a Persona game, but it might not have been.
So, I was not Persona trash when I got the Vita.
Got it.
This was pre me getting into Persona, but this was something that I had gotten the lowdown from a friend of okay, you want to play Persona, start with 3, you can't go back. Trying to play 3 after playing 4 will just result in frustration and you want the story.
Smart man.
He gave great advice on that one. Fortunately, the PlayStation Vita doesn't play UMD format that the PSP does, but it does have a very robust backwards compatible marketplace with the PSP.
Oh, interesting.
I don't remember how much of the PSP's back catalog is available digitally for the Vita, but it is a good chunk, and I would, off the top of my head, guess it certainly feels larger than Nintendo has ever offered of their own back catalog.
Until now with like the Switch, but yeah.
Yeah.
Switch,
concurrent with Virtual Console, this had it beat cold. Also,
Yeah.
NSO is spread out over a lot more consoles, so it is deep and robust. But the PSP, Persona 3 Portable is probably my favorite way to play Persona 3. Reload's amazing. I love it. Still P3P. I remember early lockdown, like summer of 2020. I had started playing Persona 3 Portable late 2019 because I remember talking about it during rehearsals for a show I was in with one of the writers who was also, actually he's been on the show. I was talking about it with Leon. So that was my introduction to Persona in general. And I had picked up Persona 4 Golden at a used store before that. And I'm like, I got to beat Persona 3 first, but soon. So around like 2021 or so, I started delving in there. And yeah, no, I haven't come out of that hole. The earliest Vita game that I remember really losing myself in was Muramasa Rebirth.
Hell yeah.
Yes. Vanillaware thrived on
Best
the Vita.
version of Odin Spear, Leifrisier, because of that. I'm just going to get it out of the way. It was going to come up eventually. Like the Vita, best D-pad of the last like 25 years. Easy, clears.
No arguments. Lukewarm take. You are correct.
It is so good. And there's so many games that very specifically I have gone out of my way to play on the Vita, not because that's the best way to play it, but because I want to play it with those controls. Mm-hmm. That D-pad's just so good. It's clicky, but it's not stiff, but it's not mushy. It's like, just love it. Love it.
The real estate of the Vita feels nice. It is sizable enough that you don't feel cramped. It is not so large and unwieldy that it feels like a Steam Deck. It is, certainly to my hands, an excellent form factor. And even one where there's a lot of areas that are kind of be careful where you hold, because there was a front touchpad on the screen, but there was a rear touchpad, or there were two that were on the back. You know, the 3DS has two screens, several touchpads, baby, let's go.
The Vita would be a better console if they just didn't have those.
I know. They were fun for Tearaway.
Oh, yeah. It's like Tearaway is like the one example where it's actually worthwhile. And if you're listening right now and you have not played Tearaway, do not play the PS4 version. If you have a Vita, pick up the Vita version. That's the way to play Tearaway.
It was made for that. It was the way that we were talking about on our 3DS retrospective about the 3DS being a toy and a device and designed and all of this. The Vita had that too. The Vita, unfortunately, had that delightful overdesign from the idea of being a cell phone. It was an overdesigned media device where touch controls were a thing. And so they just added a little more of that, as well as gyroscopic and camera and everything else. When you were looking at different models of the PS Vita to buy, one of the things that kind of turned me off on it, A, the price, I couldn't afford it in its original OLED version. For second, you could get a 3G version.
Okay, so that was absolutely worthless at launch, but nowadays, that's the best version to get for one specific reason. The Vita kind of is a tale of two lives. From 2011 to like late 2016, that was the Vita's original life. Then it got hacked, and ever since then, it's been completely different. You've gotten people that have ported a bunch of Android games to it. Like there's a port of Sonic Mania that people have put on the Vita. When it comes to the 3G model, the way that the 3G interfaces with the Vita is over USB. So people were able to find out we can make a replacement PCB for this 3G module that has a micro SD card slot on here, and then we write a driver so that if you put the micro SD card in there, you can have, like, instead of having that 3G module, you just have like a bunch of internal storage. Like my Vita downstairs, I have a 3G OLED model with 256 gigabytes of internal storage because I did a hard mod with that replacement 3G module. And nowadays, most people, especially if you have the slim model, you just get one of those like adapters that goes in the game card slot. But I love physical copies, so being able to have like my cake and eat it too, it works great. It's also, I think, a little bit faster because it's like using the internal like a USB connection instead of the game card slot.
Yeah.
So it's like it helps a little bit, but not anything noticeable. But still, it's a great time.
Yeah. Well, and again, that sort of like over cable, over everything else, there's those weird little ways where the Vita, and this is something that was a slow burn for me, where either between brand loyalty or feeling like I was never going to have it or whatever, I ignored a lot of the hype at the initial launch. And so the discovery of like, oh wow, this does data transfer over USB brilliantly. This does all these other things like so well, has been this like slow unfurling for me. It's been so cool. And I haven't even hacked it yet.
You should definitely hack your Vita. The funny thing about that is that like with the 3DS and the Wii U, mostly the 3DS and like obviously now the Switch, like Nintendo's been, if they even catch a whiff that you've hacked your system and you haven't done all these different precautions, banned. Sony, they have never given a single care about Vita hacking. You know it's bad because if you're running like homebrew and you're online, that gets relayed to PSN. So somebody can go on your like their PSN friends list, and if you're on it and you're playing homebrew, they'll see because the Vita is going to tell like PSN what it's playing, and they'll be able to say, "Oh, you're playing Sonic Mania on the Vita? What?"
And they can just be like, guys, stop it.
And they've never banned anyone for that.
I think this also carries into a little bit of how they've treated their digital marketplace, where Nintendo has shut down the eShop on the Wii U and the 3DS, you know. Oh, you wanted to play those games? Get fucked. But PS3 and Vita, they have made it more and more inconvenient. And I think mostly in response to sickos like us going, hey, we still want this, going like, okay, we're not going to close it, but we're not going to like waste digital space on it. You have to access the eShop from the device you're using.
I miss the web store.
I do too.
The web store for like the old PlayStation Network web store was so good. It was so good.
It was a little bloated and janky, but never unusable and kind of charming because of it, you know?
It was very late aughts, early 2010s coded in the best sort of way.
Yeah. But I definitely know that when they did the initial, like, we're going to shut everything down, I definitely finally panic bought Sound Shapes. I don't regret that.
I remember for a very brief window, like I almost sold my PS3 copy of 3D Dot Game Heroes because people were like, oh no, they're shutting down the PSN. These physical copies of this game are going to go for over $100. And then a week later, they were like, never mind. And then the price plummeted again.
Which I personally love because the PS3 out of like this period of time between PS4, Vita, and PS3, that was the last one I got. So picking up the pieces there has been nice.
Yeah. So Sony's initial vision for the Vita was it was going to be a PS3 in your pocket. It was going to have these massive AAA games. And we saw bits and pieces of that. We got an Uncharted. We got a really good Killzone with Killzone Mercenary.
Yeah.
We got a few other things here and there. We got Tearaway. We got Wipeout. But they gave up on that sort of thing very early. And it was pretty much just Japan Studio and third parties like picking up the slack. Rest in peace, Japan Studio.
Yeah.
After a certain point. It was those games that really left the legacy that even now, like you see, you've played Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, and it's you didn't play it on Vita, but that was originally a Vita exclusive in Japan.
Yeah.
Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Donna, that was a Vita exclusive in Japan before it got ported to PS4. And like, if you've played an Ys title, if you ask most people that have played Ys, what's the first one you played? Nowadays, it would be Ys 8, because that's the best one. That was a Vita exclusive. Any Saga sickos in this call?
It's been a while. I'm purely Saga Frontier at this point.
Yeah, Saga Scarlet Grace was originally a Vita exclusive before it got ported to other platforms.
You're right. Yes, that's true.
There's like so many of these games that you don't really realize that their legacy was started on the Vita. Labyrinth of Refrain was originally a Vita exclusive. Then it came out on PlayStation 4, Switch, and eventually PC. The real legacy for the Vita is in terms of those like AA, smaller Japanese releases. They weren't setting the world on fire, but they left a very deliberate legacy, and sometimes in ways that you wouldn't expect. It was a multi-platform release, but like Aquaplus like did a lot of stuff on the Vita. They did Dungeon Travelers and the remake to 2-2. They did the Utsuwada Mono trilogy with the remake of the first game, Prelude to the Fallen, Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth, and then those games ended up being an inspiration at Bandai Namco for Digimon Survive, where they deliberately said that the structure of that game was meant to be a lot like Utsuwada Mono. One of the things that always fascinates me with the Vita is that it never did well commercially outside of Japan, where it did all right.
Yeah.
But you keep seeing all of these different like developers just straight up say how it influenced them. And you see these like games that were originally Vita exclusives get follow-ups where it's like, okay, these aren't Vita exclusives anymore, but you can very clearly see the DNA from those original Vita titles and how they've kept going forward. Scarlet Grace was originally a Vita exclusive. Saga Emerald Beyond is very much in that same vein, even if it's not on the Vita anymore.
The Vita is it is Sony's cornerest corner case. There's so many Vita titles that people know, but not because of the Vita. It is their most Wii U console. It is also, in a way, their most, if you'll forgive me, their most Sega console.
It's very Sega Saturn.
It's very Sega Saturn. It's very Sega 32X. It is reaching in a lot of fun directions and doing things that aren't necessarily bad or wrong. They may have been ill-timed. They may have had one or two big stumbling blocks to them, but they were not bad at all, which is why the people that have played the titles that came from the Vita, that have experienced the Vita, are like, if you take it out of its original context, you kind of go, this rules. This is kind of pretty good. Like, what the hell? But there were so many things against it. That timing between the PS3 and the PS4 release, where it was the PS3 in your pocket, but we're gonna kind of connect it onto the PS4, but we're gonna take a little while to tell you how that's gonna work and make that work. So there was an awkward dip that happened. We're gonna talk about this more later, but I will reference it now. There was the whole memory card issue, which I think if you had to pick one thing, if you had to pick the ET that caused the crash for it, I would say the memory cards. I may be wrong, but that's my personal feeling.
Yep.
But to hold the device in your hands, to experience it, to play it, it's good. It doesn't have obvious pitfalls. So much of it is intangible, which is wild to see. So it's always that kind of thing. Like, you can pick it up and you go, why did this fail? Then you start investigating it.
Yep.
I mean, as the audience surrogate, since I don't have all of this info, what is the memory card thing? I remember the hubbub about it vaguely at the time, but like, what was the big issue?
So I will say that the PS Vita is also an interesting exercise in Sony learning their lessons from PSP. Some of them were actually good lessons, and some of them were not. On one hand, the Vita learned UMDs are a bad idea. Let's just stick with SD card style stuff. Great. Sony is also a technology company. One of the reasons why they push DVD players in the PS2, why they push Blu-ray in PS3, is they also manufacture and sell DVD players and Blu-ray players. They sell devices as well. Any console manufacturer wants to have a monolith, a silo of all pieces come back to them. So where something like the 3DS used SD cards for storage, and so many devices do these days, the PSP had SD-like proprietary memory cards.
Ugh.
They are roughly the same size, but kind of in the same way that the 3DS is almost like a DS card, except for that little tab. There's just a little bit of difference, and people have made adapters.
They're a little bit fatter.
They're a little bit fatter, yeah.
They haven't made adapters for the memory cards themselves. They've specifically done the internal thing where if you have a 3G model, you can swap out the module, or you have the game card adapter, and then there's a driver where it just reads it through the game card slot.
And doesn't that sound fun?
Yeah.
And also memory. The price for that bottoms out every 3 weeks, it feels like. So buying a 16 gigabyte card versus a 120 gigabyte card versus a 512 gigabyte card over the years has altered rapidly. Because these are proprietary memory cards, the price never drops. And they have held at, the last I checked, which has been a little while, basically $2 per gig.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's
so
ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's a few other things that need to be mentioned when we bring up the proprietary storage. When the Vita originally came out, a 32 gigabyte Vita memory card was $80.
And it was the biggest one at the time, wasn't it?
It was the biggest one at the time. You could get a 64 gigabyte micro SD card or an SD card for your 3DS for about half the cost at the time. So obviously there was a big difference there. The read speeds, the write speeds were not good. They were not good. And over time, you'll notice that the failure rates for these proprietary memory cards were also like significantly higher than microSD.
And the larger the card, the higher the failure rate. The 128 gigabyte card is a gamble.
64 gigabyte. There is no 128 gigabyte card, actually. It's
Thank
only
you. I
tops
remember
out
whatever the
128.
biggest one. Yeah, the 64. I have a 32 for that reason.
Yeah. It was even worse because in Japan, if you wanted to play Phantasy Star Online 2 or Monster Hunter Frontiers on a Vita, because those had Vita ports, by the time those games were over, it's like, if you want to play PSO2, you need to have a separate 64 gigabyte memory card for this, because that whole download will not fit within a 32 gigabyte card.
And Sarah gives me grief now for spending more than $5 on a PS1 memory card, I tell you.
Yeah.
She's right, but...
Imagine a major player in the games industry releasing a portable console that requires specific memory cards. No one would possibly do that now.
To be fair, the Switch 2 is at least trying to get ahead on technology.
Yeah, no.
Hopefully everything catches up.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not the same. I guarantee you at a minimum, the next Steam Deck will use that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, yeah, and
But
those
at the
memory
moment,
cards-
it does feel shitty. You're absolutely right, Matt.
Because the Express cards only come in the smaller formats, and like for me, as a nutcase who wants to put all of their games on their Switch 2, I'm waiting for a 512 card, one that's affordable, because right now they want like
$80 or something like that.
100. I think the last I checked it was $110, and I'm like, can we bring that down like a little bit? Sony, for the longest time with their home consoles, had proprietary memory cards the way all home consoles did. So, like, I see the leap of logic, sort of, but, like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
The thing that always got me about the Vita memory cards is that it wasn't so much of a problem in my mind about the Memory Stick Pro Duos on the PSP, because Sony was also using it for their cameras and other things. And especially by the end, it was big enough that you actually could get adapters for microSD cards to put them into a Memory Stick Pro Duo, and that worked out great. The thing that really got me about the Vita memory cards is that I owned a PSP Go. That had its own proprietary memory card thing if you wanted to use more than the 16 gigabytes of internal storage it had. It's not the same card.
I did not know that.
That's ridiculous.
That's heinous.
Yeah.
The other fun thing that I do want to talk about while we are talking about memory card, digital landscape, etc. One, the digital landscape for the Vita was goddamn incredible.
All the indie games.
Any indie game you can think of that came out up to 4 years after the PS Vita was discontinued had a banging Vita version.
Shout out to TXK, the best Llamasoft game. Still is. Go to Bandcamp and check out the soundtrack, because that eventually got re-released as, like, I think Tempest 4000?
Tempest 4000, yes.
Yeah, but they had to change the soundtrack, and the original soundtrack was so much better.
I actually didn't know that. I'll go check that out. Hell yeah. Well, also, look, there's, on our 3DS retrospective, I mentioned games that I'm like, having that second touchscreen's amazing. This is the definitive way to play it. The Vita is my definitive way to play VVVVV.
Yes.
Like, indie games of that ilk, early Humble Bundle days, like that kind of thing, brilliant, beautiful, chef's kiss. I'm sure Shovel Knight feels good on Vita, and I know it has a physical release for that.
That's how I played Shovel Knight. That's how I played Undertale. It had a physical Vita release.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
It's how I first played Guacamelee.
Yep. It's how it wasn't how I first played Risk of Rain or La Mulana, but it's like I got into those games on PC, and then when Limited Run did their like La Mulana EX release, I was like, I want a physical copy for this. This box art looks amazing, and I got a copy that way.
Yeah, it kind of has a proto Steam Deck feel in that way of like, those are those like Steam darlings that had really just solid, 3DS ports could have special things that use the 3DS that feel like so cool. But
I remember at the time when the Vita was like kind of like really like off ramping, but like
around 2016.
Geo Corsi like would remember PlayStation Experience. I never got to go, but I always wanted to. I remember like during one of those, like Geo Corsi said that, yeah, the Vita hasn't sold well in North America, but like the people that own it are sickos. Like we have like a 15 game attach rate on this thing. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, pretty much. And look, I am somebody as a collector who has, I want to say, around 17 consoles and most major handhelds. Whenever I go somewhere, the first thing I check is, y'all got Vita games? Because the sickos know. I am slowly getting more and more into visual novels, which means I will probably buy more Vita games because the Vita, it's delightful trash genres, dungeon crawler visual novel.
Dungeon crawlers, shout out to Stranger of Sword City, shout out to Demon Gaze, shout out to Labyrinth of Refrain Galleria. Those versions didn't get localized, the Vita versions, but that's how I played Galeria. I played it on my Vita, which was crazy because when I played Refrain, I played it on my Switch. So it's like I played the sequel to a game that I reviewed on Switch on the Vita, and I don't think I'm ever going to have an experience like that ever again.
And that's what it is. The Vita, more than so many other consoles, so many other handhelds devices, is this weird, like, compound in the cracks. It was the base model PS3, but in your pocket. It was the most powerful-ass cell phone to play games of its time. It was the Steam Deck before the Steam Deck existed. It was all of these little bits and pieces. And I think one of the reasons, you get something like a 15-game attach rate is everybody has gaming ideals in their head. Having a device that feels like it's swinging for a ton of them, you pick one of them and it carries you the rest of the way. It feels like a beautifully over-designed device with no aim. Whatever they were trying to do, I don't know what it is anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to go with it. And it is easily on par. Everybody talks about how good the 3DS battery is for holding onto a charge and everything else.
Sleep mode on the Vita is insane.
Exactly.
My anecdote for that is I remember I charged up my Vita to play a game like years ago. And I was like, I'm going to play something. I played it for like 5 minutes, put it to sleep mode, and I put it in my drawer, and I forgot about it for like a couple weeks. And then like a month later, I was like, oh yeah, I should play that game again. I bring it out, and it's like 50% charged still.
Yeah. Well, again, I mentioned before I played Persona 3 Portable during 2020, like early days of lockdown. Early days of lockdown, I made the same sort of perfectly sane decisions that everybody else was making at that period of time. And I was overworking myself. I was trying to feel productive. I was trying to whatever, which also meant a lot of times of I just need to disassociate and I just need to get lost in something. Getting lost in the dark hour in Persona 3? Amazing. You could put it in the sleep mode and I could trust that battery. I could be in the middle of like hour 2 of the dark hour because every time that I went in there, I did what you're supposed to do. And you get all the way to the highest floor in one night. That is what you're supposed to do, damn it. So I could be in the middle of that, grinding, doing whatever, put it to sleep, forget it exists for 4 days, come back and go, what's going on? Oh, still in the middle, still 40% battery.
Yep. You mentioned visual novels. Before lockdown, 2019, when the Vita was getting discontinued, I did a whole thing where I would go around being like, I'm going to go to all these GameStops and local game stores in my area and just ask, what Vita games you got? And that's when I started really building up my collection. And I really got into visual novels. When I said that I was playing my Vita on like the commute to community college, that's when I got into those sorts of games. And that was my gateway drug into, for lack of a better term, becoming a weeb. So
no, I often will describe to people, especially, again, as a huge Persona fan, anime nonsense. There's nothing wrong with anime nonsense, but you have to decide beforehand, how much anime nonsense are you willing to put up with today? Visual novels have a high amount, but if you're willing, you can have a great time.
I mean, just some of the VNs I've read on my Vita, it's like obviously Steins Gate Zero, Chaos Child, Muv-Luv Alternative, Higurashi. I got a physical copy of that Japanese version. I've read Higurashi on Vita. Utsuwara Mono, Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth. Those are like VN hybrids. They have like some excellent tactical RPG gameplay, by the way, but like the VN is really the main reason why people play those. Mask of Truth, though, is genuinely probably my favorite tactical RPG I've played. I read like The House in Fata Morgana. It's like I've just read so many VNs on Vita. And honestly, I think part of the reason I've slacked on reading VNs is it was like the perfect form factor for it. Like a Switch is like a bit too big.
Yeah.
The Steam Deck is definitely too big.
But a Vita is like a paperback.
Yeah. Very comfortable to just like read a visual novel on my Vita in bed, which is how I read like 90% of the VNs I read. So
nice.
Same thing with like Danganronpa and like Zero Escape and stuff like that. But yeah.
Oh God, that's a rabbit hole that is taunting me.
The 100 line calls for you. It's Game of the Year, and we need more warriors to be able to argue that in time for the Game Awards.
Yeah, it's funny. I've gotten gifted. So I have Zero Escape and I have Danganronpa on PS5. Like, I did not realize that those games also, along with a lot of others, have a history on the Vita. Like, again,
oh yeah, Chunsoft.
Yeah, I mean, Chunsoft was huge there, but all, like, even with Persona and Digimon, when I first decided to buy Digimon, it was because Ken Shepard led his quest across the internet to get us all to play or replay that game. And I'd wanted to, just because I loved Digimon growing up. I hadn't played a Digimon game since like Digimon World 3, I guess, or whatever, like one of the PlayStation games. So I was like, sure, why not? And when I booted it up, I was like, oh, this is pretty great. I wonder what this was originally on. It runs pretty well on the Switch. And I was like, this is a 13-year-old Vita game? What?
13-year-olds. It turned
or
10
years
it turned
old.
10
Yeah.
this year.
Like, it's a older Vita game, and I had no idea. Why did this get a Switch port so much later? I then went down the rabbit hole of all that, and it's just very funny to me that there are some games with Golden. I knew it was on PC and it had been on other consoles, but I couldn't quite remember like what version or where, and so I just assumed it was like a PlayStation game or something, and it was, but like...
And it's so funny that, like, okay, Persona 3 comes out on the PS2, and then it gets Persona 3 FES. It's like updated release, re-release, also on the PS2. Persona 5 has Persona 5 Royal. Persona 5 was on the PS3 and the PS4. Royal was only on the PS4, but it was still part of it.
Right.
Persona 4 was a 2010, 2011?
I think it was like 2008, 2009 for the PS2 release.
For the PS2 release, okay, because I know it was latter days, and yeah, 2012 was like the days where it was only getting soccer games. So yeah, 2008, 2009, and then yeah, 2012 or so, you get Persona 4 Golden on the Vita.
Oh, so it didn't even get it was only on the Vita. It
was only on the Vita. When the PS TV came out, people were like, why do we need a PlayStation TV? Because this is how you're supposed to play Persona 4 Golden. This is the ideal. This is the final form.
It's crazy how like obviously Persona 5 is how people understand that Persona kind of like got big and like put Atlas on the map for people that aren't sickos like us. But the thing that people kind of underestimate is, the Vita wasn't very successful, but one of the games that we know sold over 1 million copies is Persona 4 Golden. And that wasn't just Japan. That blew up in the West.
Yeah. And I think more people need to talk about Persona 4 Dancing All Night.
Mm-hmm.
The less I say about that game, the better. I don't like it very much. I'm a rhythm game sicko. Talk to me about Taiko no Tatsujin. Okay, if you want to hear about a real Vita exclusive game that's really good, EA VT Colorful. It was developed by Marvelous in Japan, never got localized because of licensing stuff. And actually, they said at the time that since they knew they couldn't localize it, they specifically made it so that the menus were like fully English, so you could just play it if you imported it. It was directed by Kenichiro Takaki, who's the guy that created Senran Kagura.
Oh, Jesus.
But it's a really, really good rhythm game, and it's still a Vita exclusive, just really good. But there's a lot of great rhythm games on Vita. DJ Max, Technica Tune, Super Beat Sonic. I think the best way to describe how much of a Vita sicko I was, Taiko no Tatsujin V version. I imported that and I bought every single song DLC for that game, including all of the Falcom music, Toho music, all of the Vocaloid music. I don't want to talk about how much all of that DLC costs.
And that is also one of the things that I think is both interesting and kind of a downfall of the Vita. The Vita was kind of, again, in the cracks between the PS3 and the PS4, it was deep in the throes of DLC and add-on content. We think about how DLC and everything is nowadays. This was kind of latter days of the first phase where some dumb shit happened.
Still had online passes. I remember that if you bought Killzone Mercenaries secondhand, you would have had to buy like an online pass. There was also like DLC to have bot matches offline, which people specifically bought just so they could get the platinum trophy once the online was dead.
Yeah, because you needed that.
Yeah.
Matt and I have done our talk about the Switch 2 release, and I have made my feelings on the digital game cards known. But whenever I think about them, I think about Final Fantasy X 10-2 on the Vita, so Final Fantasy X and 10-2 had an HD release on the PS3 and the PS Vita. And I want so badly to play the Vita version. I can't describe to you how viscerally I want to play it. However, the game card only contains 10. If you bought it new, there was a download code for 10.2. And if I'm not mistaken, you can't purchase 10.2 on its own.
You can. You can purchase it digitally. You can also buy 10.2 like a separate game card. There's like Asian English releases you can get, which is actually a thing that I took advantage of on the Vita.
I may do that.
There was some games that never got a physical release in the US, but got a physical release. There were English versions in like Malaysia or Singapore or Hong Kong.
Yes, PlayAsia was your friend for the Vita, especially after, I think it was 2016, when Sony just went, we're not producing more Vita cards.
Yeah, I think it was like after 2017.
2017.
Yeah, I think the last like North American physical Vita card I got was the House and Fata Morgana. And then the last Vita card I got proper was Labyrinth of Galeria, which is like, I think the last or second to last game that was like printed on a cartridge at all. And that was like late 2020. We're talking end of November 2020.
There were some folks that were really keeping that fire going.
Yeah.
I was excited to find a physical copy of Persona 5 Dancing on physical card in a shop in New Jersey at Digital Press in Clifton.
I forgot that got a Vita release.
It got a Vita release. 3 and 5 got Vita releases, but only physical in Japan. That was right when they were discontinuing the physical cards from Sony. That was one of those where I was waiting. I nearly jumped on it. I didn't quite. So when I found it, I was like, fuck it, I need this.
Yeah, I've gone to Tokyo the last couple of years for TGS, and every time I go, I make it a point to go to Akihabara and be like, okay, I'm going to do rotations, all the different stores, and see, okay, what Vita games do they got? Is there anything I want? It's crazy, some of the things that you can find there.
I'd love to go one day.
One developer that I don't think has gotten super big outside of like their niche yet, but they're kind of on the way to it, is like Gust, the Atelier guys.
Oh, yeah.
They did Atelier Yumiya this year, which has sold 500,000 copies so far.
Jesus.
For a while, like Vita was just their bread and butter. Like they would release Atelier games on the PS3, and then it's like, don't buy it there. That's a trap. They're going to release an updated version of it. For example, Atelier Aisha Plus, and that's going to be exclusive to the Vita until they port all these games to a remaster trilogy like 5 years later. Those Atelier games, like I own the entire like Dusk trilogy on Vita specifically because that was the best way to play them at one point. You talked about Vanillaware earlier, but that's another thing. It's like Muramasa Rebirth, that's still the best way to play that game. That's one of like
it's incredible.
Vanillaware's best games. And like obviously Dragon's Crown Pro is on PS4, which is still relatively modern. You can still find copies, but it's it doesn't add anything that the Vita and PS3 versions didn't have. So the Vita version is still just as good.
By and large, it's just one of those, it's slightly nicer and it's a way to play it on the PS4.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when I played Dragon's Crown on the Vita, my friend who was on PS3 was like always bitching like the mini game in between missions where you had to like grab all the foods. Like on the Vita, you just tap everything to the touchscreen, you do it almost instantly. And he's like, how the fuck are you doing that so quickly?
Right. Well, the same thing of opening all the doors, opening all the chests, and doing all the fairy stuff. It was all like touchpad and like everything else. And it was my favorite way to play it. And that also reminds me of something that I will say very much in Vita's favor. The memory card notwithstanding, the cloud save was quite good when transferring between systems. You could transfer saves for Dragon's Crown between the Pro version and the PS3, PS Vita version. Very easily, very handily. Playing Persona 4 Golden, my partner Sarah and I played through Persona 4. We had a great time. We played Golden. We were playing it on the PS TV so that we could sit together on the couch and play Persona. When we went on trips, going to conventions, whatever else, she wanted to still play Persona 4. We were having a great time. And it's like, well, it's just a Vita card. Can't you just put it in the Vita? No, you've got to transfer the save. You can do that, and you can do it very quickly and very easily. We could transfer it onto the Vita, do what we're doing, transfer that back onto the TV. No problems, no glitches, no anything.
I have my own story that's kind of similar to that. Like I've established, the Vita made me into a weeb, and I was very much a rhythm game sicko. One of the games I imported before it got localized, Hatsune Miku Project Diva Cross. It was really good. I know a lot of people had issues with how every song was just a stage dance instead of it being like a whole video and like a kind of like a theatrical like presentation.
I don't care. I'm not watching the video. I'm playing the rhythm game.
Yeah, I feel like it has the best like singular track list of the series on Vita. With the previous games on Vita, Sega had a thing where you could save transfer one time from the Japanese release to the North American release, which was why it was an option on the main menu. Prior to the localization, they said that they weren't doing that this time, but there was something similar that they couldn't really go into any details with. When I reviewed the Western PS4 version of that game, I realized that there was a cross-save function. And it wasn't just cross-save between Vita and PlayStation 4. It was cross-save between different regions. So the Vita version got an update, and I was able to upload the save data from my Japanese version of that game, the Japanese Vita version, and then I loaded up my, at the time, review copy for the North American PS4 version, downloaded my save data, and it was like, got all these different trophies because it's like I'd already beat the game like months ago. And it wasn't a one-way thing. It's like I could play it on my PS4, and it's like, oh, I want to play it on my Vita again. Just transfer it over. I love that.
It was, yet again, this weird device that lives between the cracks.
The cross-save stuff and how that's worked is also a big reason why I love the Steam Deck, because I'm very much a PC gamer. I love PC gaming. I have like a huge beefy desktop at home. I have a pretty capable laptop. And then it's like, well, what if I want to play something in bed? Steam Cloud is just awesome. It's like some games, even if they have specific functionality, they can make it so like Dragon Quest Builders, the PC version of that, for example, if you put your Steam Deck into sleep mode, it will save and upload that save to the cloud. If you put your Steam Deck in sleep mode, you can just immediately go to your desktop and pick up your save without even having to close the game on the Steam Deck, and vice versa. It's like insane.
Yeah. Kind of the longer we talk about this, the more I realize how the PS Vita kind of exists as a proto Steam Deck.
Mm-hmm.
It's another case of like something coming too soon before I think we were ready for it. I think of like the Dreamcast, even the Virtual Boy, which I think ultimately was not thought through and how it would be used. There was quality about it, even though it was poorly implemented. Even the Wii U, which I take a lot of shots at just because it's funny. The Wii U had a lot of good on it, but it just came in this in-between period that didn't really work. Consoles like the Vita prove that the love of video games isn't enough for the success of a console. Timing is so key to this. And it's why when people like bellyache about, why did the Switch wait till the summer? Why was Donkey Kong a month later? Like, there are reasons they do this. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. But I think at the end of the day, the reason the Vita and a lot of consoles like it have gone that way, the 32X we mentioned earlier, is because timing and corporate bullshittery combined lead to these mistakes that tank something that was otherwise a pretty impressive piece of tech.
I feel like if I was going to point to one specific reason the Vita failed, it's the memory cards. But the whole reason they did the memory cards is because everyone knew if you had a PSP, chances are you hacked it. But the thing is that piracy wasn't as big of a deal as people made it out to be, but the companies thought it was.
Yeah.
So Sony was like, okay, how do we convince these third parties to support us? Oh, let's have this proprietary memory card so it's harder for people to get data from their PC to the Vita. It's funny how you're talking about like save data backup, but the thing is that required PlayStation Plus, and that's all well and good. The problem is, though, is the only option to back up save data. If you wanted to back up save data otherwise, you had to like back up your entire system using a special program on your PC called the QCMA Manager. That was like one thing that people don't really talk about. Sony was so restrictive on how you could it was very like Apple at the time, like how you would plug in like an iPhone and would like interact with like iTunes back in the day.
Yeah.
With how the Vita would connect to the PC. You had to have dedicated software for it. Nowadays, that doesn't matter because people just have their own software that can bypass that. But Sony was so desperate to try and like court these big Western AAA developers that after the first year, they just disappeared. It's like, yeah, we got an exclusive Assassin's Creed that was all right. Beyond that, like we got Child of Light, we got Rayman Legends, both great games.
Yeah.
But Ubisoft kind of just disappeared after that. EA did a singular Madden, and then they disappeared. Activision did a bad Call of Duty game, then disappeared.
They did a Call of Duty game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did their due diligence and then threw a smoke bomb.
They did their duty.
We like to close these with our favorite game. Like, if you had to point to one game that was like the pinnacle for this console, like, I hate to Boss Baby this. Like, I has only seen Boss Baby compares everything.
Getting real Boss Baby vibes from this.
I feel like every time I talk about the Vita, I'm basically Boss Babying it. But what I've played of Digimon Cyber Sleuth, I expected the game to be good. I did not expect to be absolutely blown away by it. And then thinking back to it just being a Vita game also that I'm playing on my Switch too, kind of blows me away, especially considering how intricate it is. It's basically a visual novel with monster fighting elements, but like the stuff I care about are the narratives of this ridiculous detective agency and your really hot boss who is running the detective agency.
And visually it holds up. It's like, obviously it doesn't look like a native PS4 game, but it looks good enough.
Yeah.
It looks good enough.
That's all it needs to.
Yep.
So if I had to pick my favorite Vita game that I have yet to play on a Vita, it would probably be Cyber Sleuth, the base game, because that's all I've played. I haven't finished it yet, but I've loved what I played of it. I mean, the nostalgia is pretty heavy for the Digimon that I've created, creating all of the ones from season 1 that were my favorites. Honestly, this conversation has made me very excited to eventually, maybe if I can find one at a decent price, get my hands on a Vita. It is a hole in my catalog, and I feel like there are a lot of games on it that I may not even have or can get anywhere else. I mean, there's an Uncharted game on it. That's the only Uncharted game I've never played is Golden Abyss. And so there are reasons to get it. To you, James, you've listed a lot of exclusive games to this console and like unique franchises. If you had to pluck something out as like your favorite game, do you have one that comes to mind?
So I'm on the record saying that I think Labyrinth of Gloria is my favorite game, but that's not exclusive. If I'm going to say something that was originally exclusive, I would say either Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Donna, but the PS4 version of that added quite a few things and improved that game. I love the Vita. I'm a sicko for the Vita. You do not play the Vita version of Ys 8 in 2025. Saga Scarlet Grace, I think, maybe, because that's genuinely, I think, one of the top 5 RPGs that Square Enix has put out. That was originally a Vita exclusive. Like, shit, just listen to the soundtrack on like Apple Music or Spotify, and just Kenji Ito is just a god when it comes to soundtracks. It's just such a good game. Such a good game. Not for everyone. I distinctly remember when that finally got localized in 2019. RPG site, Some Inside Baseball. We were originally going to record our Game of the Year podcast on a Saturday, and then Discord, because we record stuff through Discord, had like an outage. So it's like, we'll do it next week. I had played Saga Scarlet Grace, but I hadn't beaten it, and people had just started it too. Because of that delay, enough of us had actually finished that game that it ended up being our RPG of the year that year.
Wow.
Incredible. What about you, Geoff? A lot of the games that you've talked about and that we've talked about in the past are games that are more well-known or stuff that have been available everywhere. But I'm curious if you have an exclusive Vita game that really like shines to you that would be your pinnacle for the console.
Well, first of all, I'd like to shout out a few things.
Mm-hmm.
Until the Pixel remaster came out, the PS Vita was where you could play the most Final Fantasy games in one place.
You could play all of them from 1 to 10-2.
1 to 10-2, if you used the digital marketplace, it was all there. That was a big deal for me. By the same token, I believe you could play the first 4 Disgaias.
Yes, and that's still the best version of Disgaea 3.
Oh my god, yeah. So there are more than a few spots that are like, the Vita is still like a wild home. You know, not enough people talk about the Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate for Vita, where yet again, using the technology of it, using the camera and everything else, there is a hacking mechanic that is moving the Vita around so you can find the code words. Sarah played that a bunch and was like, I'm Batman, I'm a hacker. Sarah loves the Arkham games. Sarah loves any game that she can play where she instinctively just goes, I'm Batman. But I would say if I had to pick one, I've already mentioned it, it's Muramasa Rebirth. Muramasa already exists on the Wii. That's fine. If that's the only way you can play it, go experience the story. Muramasa Rebirth fixed every problem the original Muramasa had.
It has a better translation. It has a jump button. It has
That's right.
DLC. It has like 3 or 4 DLCs, which basically over doubles the content in the game because it's like different like characters that with like completely different stories, completely different play styles.
Wild stories, wild everything. Yeah, you know, Muramasa Rebirth as a Vanillaware game is anime Vanillaware nonsense as hell. And if you're on board for that, you're going to have the best goddamn time. And if you're not on board for that, you're still going to find a really good, deep game. It's difficulty adjustment, it's accessibility adjustment. It can laugh at Dark Souls in terms of parry buttons and timing windows.
Oh yeah, that's the hardest like a Vanillaware game by a country mile.
Chaos mode is just you're dying. You are dying. You are dying. You might survive. You're dying.
Yep.
But you don't have to use that, and it is still a challenging, fun, puzzling. It's got a nice platform element. It is as gorgeous as any Vanillaware game. It encourages multiple playthroughs. It's a fantastic game.
It really reminds me of, like, obviously you have the 2D Ninja Gaidens and the 3D Ninja Gaidens. Muramasa Rebirth is like, what if you took the design sensibilities of the 3D Ninja Gaidens and made a 2D game out of it?
It was my first Vanillaware game. I would not have it any other way.
That's awesome. Vanillaware is another company that, like, I knew existed but didn't know existed, and then next thing I knew, I was playing like 8 different games by them, especially over the last few years. I mean, I have an unopened physical copy of Unicorn Overlord for the Switch that I want to play desperately, but I also don't have the 70 hours to devote to it, or 60 hours, or whatever it is.
Word.
Play Grim Grimoire once more. That's like a 6-7 hour game.
Yeah. I mean, Geoff and I, when we did an Extra Life stream together when I was still displaced living in a different apartment, we played Dragon's Crown multiplayer with Jesse Vitelli and streamed it for Extra Life. And that was my first experience with Dragon's Crown, which I loved. I thought it was so much fun. It seems like if I really want to dig deep on Vanillaware, along with Atlas and some other like well-known studios, the Vita is a solid place to go to get it.
Yeah.
The Vita, for so many companies, it's like, it's not the only place you can get it. But if you want a good spot or you want a wide net, the Vita will surprise you.
Yeah, and we've only talked about Vita games here. Well, you talked about Persona 3 Portable. I do want to stress, especially if you hack a Vita, it's the best way to play PSP games. Like, let me put in perspective. When I was going through the Final Fantasy series in like 2021, 2022, one of the games I played was Final Fantasy 3. And I specifically played, because this was before the Pixel remasters, I played the PSP version. You want to know one thing that you can do with a hacked Vita? You can give yourself save states for PSP games.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
If either of you have played Final Fantasy 3, you know why that's important.
Man, with save states on that console, you could make Mega Man Power Up and Mega Man X Magvac Hunter good games, because they are not good games.
Yeah, it's like I've played so much of my PSP backlog on the Vita because that's just the best way of doing it.
There's a surprisingly robust options menu for PSP playing on the Vita, even without hacking. I am a huge fan of the Katamari Damacy series.
Yep.
Love it to death and back. Touch My Katamari is fine. It is also very much victim to that rampant DLC-ism of the time. Me and My Katamari on the PSP is actually a nice, concise, tight title. And Katamari Damacy is a dual-stick game, but the PSP did not have 2 sticks. But you can program both sticks to function as if it were
The D-pad and face buttons, yeah.
Yes, because you use D-pad and face buttons on the PSP, and you could use dual sticks on the Vita.
That's awesome. Well, I feel like I've learned something. I hope our audience has too, but I definitely feel like I have. This has been fun to kind of go on this ride with the two of you. From the moment I saw your library that you flaunted on Blue Sky, there was no question that you were going to be the guest for this episode, James. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great to collaborate as much as we have over the last few months and to get to know each other better and interact on other Discords and other things. Take a moment before we wrap up to tell folks where they can find you online and find your work online.
You can find me on Blue Sky at thesweet, THESWWEET.bluesky.social. You can also find me occasionally on Twitch at twitch.tv/thesweet. I'm a senior editor at RPG Site. You'll mostly find me there, but I also freelance. I contribute to other places. By the time this will be up, I'll have my review for Fantasy Life I will be out on the most recent issue of Nintendo Force, or well, the August issue of Nintendo Force.
Nice.
Probably by the time this is up, my review for Lost Soul Aside will be up. Hopefully. The codes have not been sent out for that yet, so I'm worried that's going to be a launch day code, which will not be a fun time.
No, for sure not. Well, I hope you get that in advance. Definitely go check out James's writing. Some great reviews over on Skybox as well, as we were talking earlier. So definitely go check that stuff out.
At this point, we put it to you, listener. Have you played the Vita? Are you in Matt's shoes where this is the first you're really hearing about any of this PlayStation Vita nonsense, this precursor to the Portal? Do you have any favorite games? Are there games that you, much like Matt, fell in love with or enjoyed and went, where did this first come out? The Vita? What the hell? The Vita is absolutely the home of a lot of what the hell reactions, and we want to hear your what the hell reactions. So let us know. Get in touch with us. There's so many great ways to reach out. We are Fun and Games Pod across all social media that we are currently active upon, which as of this episode is Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. Email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, and who you'd like us to talk with on future episodes. Visit certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic Certain POV podcasts, but also a permanent invite link to our Discord server where a lot of these discussions continue and a lot of the topics for these episodes are generated. If you like what we do and want to help us do more of it, or just want a one-stop shop of all the things Matt and I are working on, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There is a free tier if you are not able to support in that way, but still want to be in the loop on what we're doing, and you want to be able to vote on what our next console retrospective is going to be. That vote is going to be going up the day that this episode drops. We look forward to hearing from all of you on that. We do want to shout out all of those on the high scoreboard, and today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Nyden, Alejandro Alves, Chris Copleen, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, and Sean Bowen. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. When you are finished, press the PlayStation button to go to the main menu and then kind of peel the high scoreboard down like a sticker from the upper right corner. That's how you quit out of these things. It'll get you back to the menu. You're going to be fine.
Another way that you can support us is by rating and reviewing us on your podcast platform of choice, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, or something else I haven't even thought of. Most platforms allow you to rate and review, and it really does help push us up within the almighty algorithm and have folks be able to search PS Vita retrospectives and push our podcast to the top of the list. We would love to grow this community alongside you, and rating and reviewing the pod is the best way to do that.
Whether you are here because you are also a PlayStation Vita sicko and will take any content you can, whether you are part of the Patreon already, or if this is your first episode of Fun and Games, thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matty K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Do you have a gaming subscription service like Xbox Game Pass or a crazy backlog and don't know what to play next? Well, 1H1D might be for you. Join me, Chris, and my college buddy Tom as we play a random game or a requested game for an hour and decide if it's worth playing past that hour. We go over the good, the bad, and maybe some little tidbits about the development you might not have known. Got 30 minutes? Give us a try. And if you like it, throw us a 5-star review. Try something new. You never know what might be your next favorite game.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.